Funding for the art show was made possible by Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District, the Virginia W. Kettering Foundation, proud supporter of the arts in our community, and viewers like you. Thank you.
In this edition of The Art Show, street art moves indoors.
I have no idea what I'm going to paint on that wall.
A musician bridges science and sound.
We have a different approach to designing brass instruments, and that's really incorporating acoustics and modern technology.
Meet Flat Granny.
But it is sort of me interacting with her and creating her.
And a serpentine structure snakes its way through town.
I think public art is incredibly important because it reflects whatever is going on in society.
And it's all ahead on this edition of The Art Show. Hello, I'm Rodney Veal, and welcome to the second season of The Art Show, where each week we showcase local, regional, and national artists and arts organizations. The Bronx is said to be responsible for the graffiti movement of the early 70s and the growing subculture surrounding graffiti. David Jarena is here in our studio to talk about the art form and show us just how quickly an artist can paint a wall. Welcome, David. Or should I call you by your street name, Chaos?
David's good. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Can you give our audience like a little brief history of graffiti?
We started off in the Bronx, New York City, back in the early 70s. And it wasn't really known as art at that time. It was just a bunch of kids writing on walls and claiming turf and stuff like that.
One of the questions I'm sure that everybody has in their mind is, how do you guys get away with doing graffiti art and not get caught?
We'd go out, do it at night, wear black clothing, and sometimes we'll have a friend look out for us and take turns while we do our names and stuff.
What's the difference between just doing graffiti and tagging?
A tag is like a signature, and then graffiti, say like a piece, is called, and that's where it evolved from the tag, and the letters became fatter, wider, thicker, and then colors were incorporated in patterns.
How do you see the evolution of graffiti art from back in the day until now? How do you see the evolution of it?
It's become more accepted as an art form all over the world. You know, it started off and it just blew up.
Is there a difference in the technique and the style of painting graffiti versus painting, say, a mural?
It really all depends on your tools. I've branched out into oils and brushes. So that's a little different from using a spray can.
In that process of jumping off, when did that kind of sort of happen for you? That kind of branching out, and why?
I guess I had like a graffiti overload back in the 80s. After I was my artwork was in the movie Beat Street and a couple of books. Spray can art was one of them, and I was gaining recognition. And it just, over the years, it just was so much that I just wanted to, and then a lot of people started doing it, and I just wanted to get away from it. Then I picked up a paintbrush and oil paints, and I was just focusing on other things aside from graffiti letters.
Is there anything that you feel that people misunderstand about graffiti art and this evolution of it?
I think it would be the creativity that goes into it. A lot of it is discarded as, graffiti, like it's just a tag on the wall or something. And I guess people don't take the time to really look at it and really see what it is, which is an art form.
It's very fascinating that we're going to be painting on the walls a little bit later in the show. So, do you have any sort of idea of what you're going to paint for us when you tag our wall?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it for a couple of days now, and I have no idea what I'm going to paint on that wall.
Now, is that a typical thing for you, even when you back in the day when you were actually painting? That you just had no idea, or did you have a concept? I mean, you talk about the creativity. I'm just kind of curious as to.
Yeah, but I've always planned stuff out, but recently I've started to just go at it with nothing in mind or a vision in my head and right away just do it.
So now, what brought you to the Midwest and to our local area as an artist?
I grew up in New York City, like 5 blocks from Times Square, and there was hardly ever any daylight except at noon because of the skyscrapers. And I wanted some open space, so I came out here and got the fresh air, cows and stuff like that. It's all open, so it's a different vibe.
Cool. So we're glad to have you in our community. And I can't wait to see what you're going to do with our wall. So while you're getting started, we're going to take a look at Jason Harrelson, who after decades of searching for the perfect instrument, took matters into his own hands, literally. In designing and building his own trumpets, Harrelson has found he can create a more personal sound.
My best friend, his name was Dave, and Dave was interested in playing my horn because it was a Bach Stradivarius. It was the same model as his horn, but mine was 30 or 35 years old, and his was brand new. So we swapped horns. I couldn't believe how well that horn played compared to mine because they were the exact same model. He gave me my horn back and he said, "Man, your horn plays terrible." That's really what got me started thinking about the physics of how trumpets are designed. I really wanted to understand why these two instruments would play so different. The transition from playing on that old trumpet to where I am today really came from experiments. I took trumpets apart and then I saw how they were put together and I measured all the components as detailed as I could. The artistic side of building trumpet really comes down to really understanding how to do metal work, forming and fabrication with your hands, as well as machining, because on my side of things, I machine a lot of the parts, and then incorporating the final hand touches and all the artistic things within that.
I've gone through so many trumpets in my time over the last 20-some years, and I haven't really found the right horn. I mean, there was always something a little off about each one that I would have. And then the more I started to listen and to think about music on a more professional level, I started to think about my sound and how I wanted to be different.
Joshua, when he contacted me to have a trumpet built, he was looking for a specific type of sound, and for his music, he wanted something that really has a vocal type sound. So I built his trumpet to sound more like a beautiful, big, dark voice.
Over the next 6 months, we did a lot of coordinating as far as how I wanted to be built, and he gave me a lot of perspective because he has a very scientific and engineering point of view, as well as an amazing horn player too, so he's like the package deal.
Where science meets sound has kind of been our tagline for years, and we have a different approach to designing brass instruments, and that's really incorporating acoustics and modern technology into the design and building of trumpets.
When he was building my trumpet, he came up with a combination of two different a lead pipe and a bell that when you put them together they sound really, really dark. And when I played the horn, I thought, gosh, this almost sounds like a tuba, like a small tuba. And it was perfect. It was the perfect instrument. When you play trumpet, the most important thing is the sound. It kind of goes back to just being human. Like when my mom would call me for breakfast, I can hear her sound, like her tone. And so I think about that with the trumpet is when I play, how are people going to remember that versus how many notes did I play or how high did I play? It's more or less remembering the sound. I think traditionally in the past, trumpets are always known as this really high-pitched, loud, blaring instrument that can almost sound like tin foil. The horn itself, the way he built it, actually really supports the darker end of the spectrum. I said, give me the darkest you got, and I'll take it.
There are actually 81 pieces in the simplest trumpet that I build. So I fabricate and build almost every single piece. The magic really happens when we put all these parts together and find that everything fits perfect, and then I can put it in the soldering booth. And then the rest is soldering and cleaning it up. When it's all finished and I finally get to play it and test it out, yeah, it's a great feeling because so much time and energy has been put into building that one horn. Every one of them is different, so it's a lot of fun.
This horn particularly supports that individualism, and I think it really comes from his craftsmanship as well, that he's able to really listen to what the player wants. And him being a player as well, it's so easy for him to connect with the idea. His connection to the instrument itself makes it easy for him to understand me.
For me, playing trumpet, there's more of a connection there. When I perform like that, then I can express whatever's happening. So if I'm frustrated about something or really excited, I can just let all that out. And for me, it's just a personal experience. I think art is really nothing more than an expression of really what you're feeling and thinking and what you want to bring into the world.
Art is, I believe, the human voice or the human eye, or it embodies all the senses. And I think that that's what's beautiful about art, is that it's the true reflection. It's the true history book.
I probably play about 2 hours a day, and I probably play in 15 to 30-minute sessions just in between building trumpets. So it's a great feeling, and I would encourage anyone to take up music.
Are you an artist or know an artist with an interesting story? Pitch it to us. Send an email to theartshow@thinktv.org. Include contact information and links to performances or art samples online.
Columbus artist Jenny Fine says her camera has become a tool for facilitating intimacy between herself and her family, and nowhere is that more evident than in her Flat Granny series. What started as a simple life-size photo has evolved into a full-size body costume, giving us a thought-provoking 21st century update on the role of photographs as stand-ins for absent loved ones.
I'm going to start over.
Sure, yeah.
So the Flat Daddies are cardboard cutouts that are of deployed soldiers for when they're deployed. Sorry, this is because I'm nervous.
Don't worry, just take a breath, we're good. Take it as many times as you need.
Okay. Sorry. I kind of wanted to start anyway, if it's okay. Can I just start talking more about like storytelling?
Yeah,
is that okay?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I grew up sort of in a family of storytellers. Just being from the South, I think it's part of the culture anyway, a way of passing on things and also making sense of the past. And a lot of the stories that my grandmother told me growing up, and a lot of the time that we spent together was at the table, sort of rehashing stories from the past. She was a college professor for 50 years, and so she had all of this knowledge, and at the same time was really sort of eccentric in a lot of ways. We would get all these things organized and together, and we'd go out into the landscape, and she would be so patient with me and tell me stories as we were doing it, and we would reenact these things together. Now I can look back and say that my collaboration with her started really at a really young age. And so when she died, I really felt like I wanted to extend that space of creating and that space of possibility, because in a way she made things feel really comfortable for me. When I was in grad school, another student in grad school with me, Amy Powell, brought a clipping to a critique one night about the Flat Daddy Project, which are life-size cardboard cutouts from the waist up of soldiers. When they're deployed to Iraq, they would act as a stand-in for the absent loved one. And so I became really curious and interested about what is the Flat Daddy? How are people interacting with the Flat Daddy? And so I started to search online about all these blogs and how people were literally documenting their everyday life with Flat Daddy. I wanted to think about what was a way for me to sort of continue to work with her image after her death. I started sort of just as making a life-size photograph of her and posing with just the photograph, and then started cutting her out and then putting her into these installations where things were happening around her and she was a part of it. I'm trying to think of the words. Well, I got a chance to speak about my work in Chicago a couple of months ago, and a guy was saying that it was interesting that I only refer to her now really as Flat Granny. It really is true that, I call her Flat Granny because this is Flat Granny. It's not my grandmother, but it is sort of me interacting with her and creating her is a way of sort of me trying to get back to her in a way and sort of grasp at the things that are her. Maybe I attended my grandfather's funeral, but I was so young I don't remember. So when she married Papa Clay and he died, I remember that she spent the whole reception at the funeral home walking around with a little disposable camera. And she would talk to everyone and greet everyone, and she would say, "Doesn't he look so handsome?" And then she'd walk up to the casket, charge the flash, and then take another picture of him. I couldn't not get the last image. But my dad also agrees, and I think it came to him after a little while too, that it was a shared experience. There are images definitely that we took together that she said, "This is for us. I don't want anybody to see these," and no one's ever seen them, you know. And they are sort of the special thing for me. I think about that a lot, and I feel quite certain that she's okay with it. I don't think I would do it if I felt that she wasn't okay. I don't think, I know I wouldn't do it if she wasn't okay with it. A huge responsibility, you know, possessing these images and choosing how these images live on and sort of her reputation. And I don't know, it just felt right, it felt okay. And I think for the same reason, I feel that the way I use her image still feels really right and still feels really in the vein of I don't know, it just still feels right.
See more of Jenny's work at jennyfine.com. Before we check in with Chaos, let's take a look at this last segment from Houston, where an entire neighborhood pitched in to help an artist realize his creative vision. And it was certainly a tall order. 180 feet to be precise. Take a look.
This is Montrose Boulevard, which of course is a main arts corridor from Allen Parkway on up to the CAM, the MFA. So this is a really ideal central location that we're at, where the Art League Houston is sited. There's a fair amount of traffic that comes by each day, so it's great to have something so visible, you know, on a thoroughfare. That is Funnel Tunnel. It was created from a steel armature woven with recycled painted wood. It's 180 feet long, and it's fairly consistently 5 feet in diameter all the way through. The tail end, which tapers to a point, and then on the other end it flows out into a 12-foot diameter bell or horn. So there are 4 trees on the median laid out in kind of a zigzag pattern, and I wanted to make sure that this was in concert with that. You know, maybe it had a conversation that happened with those trees and also with the traffic and with the neighborhood in general, and kind of spoke to the energy of the neighborhood. It's just made out of 2 varieties of steel stock, which is a 3/8 inch round rod and 1/4 inch round rod. So it's a very light framework that we've created, and what that looked like was building these sort of noodles, 5-foot diameter tubes, basically with a very gentle bend, and we made about 14 or 16 of those to the points where it changes shape at the end. So one end is tapered into kind of a hook, like a scorpion's tail, and the other end it bells out into a cone or sort of a trumpet. And so the idea there is that each end is unique and serves a different function. The hooked end was intended to point here to the Art League. For me, the interest in the bell or the cone end was to sort of serve as like an announcement, but also maybe to draw in people's attention. So just a fun way to play with form. After the framework was complete, it became possible to start weaving the material in. So the material that you're looking at on the surface is all from a turn of the century, I guess like 1900s cotton gin, which, you know, I didn't realize anything like that was still around. And so I got all these beautiful, huge, old-growth pine planks that I started ripping them into very thin 1/4 inch strips that were then flexible and able to be woven into the surface. So after I created this bulk of ripped material, I brought it over to the Art League here. Actually used the Texas Art Supply parking lot, which is right next door, and sponsored a painting party where people from the community could come and they could really put their creative mark on it. So it was of huge interest to me that you know, we'd be able to literally have the community show up in the project. It feels great to really draw on the energy of others and to get input too. So like the form was predetermined, but the surface was by no means known to me what that would look like. The color is based on a large number of paints that were left over from people. I was asking for people to give me, you know, like odds and ends that they had laying around in their garage or whatever. And we also had a really nice donation from the Valspar paint company. I guess it's uniformly chaotic on the surface, so it somehow works. There's been a lot of like wonderful conversations and great reactions that people have given, you know, about the project. And so some people have said, is it supposed to be like a bird's head on the end where, you know, where it tapers, or is it a snake, is it a dragon, what is it, you know? And for me it's like, well, I'm interested in what it looks like to you, you know, like I just made the form. It was sort of an intuitive form, and beyond that, whatever is associated with it, great. I think public art is incredibly important because it reflects whatever's going on in society. It can either be something just a pure pleasure, or maybe it can catalyze conversation around different issues. And I think that's really fascinating. And my favorite thing is when people from the neighborhood say, we love this, because after all, they're the ones that have to see it most often. So I'm happy to know that they like what's there.
Well, David, graffiti art is definitely a catalyst for conversation, and this piece has a lot to say. Would you agree?
Yeah, I believe that graffiti should have a voice, and you know, spray can is a great tool to tell that story.
We certainly look forward to you finishing that story and adding some more details to the mural and sharing it with the public. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it, David. And that wraps it up for this edition of The Art Show. Take some time out of your busy schedule to check out some fantastic art and performances in your area. And until next time, I'm Rodney Veal, and thanks for watching.
Funding for the Art Show was made possible by Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District, the Virginia W. Kettering Foundation, proud supporter of the arts in our community, Ohio Arts Council, Ohio Humanities Council, and viewers like you. Thank you.